I love talking to strangers. It's our whole job to observe life and then put it on the screen. That's the job. Being on set is the reason I keep trying to make films. It's the driver. There is like a joy that comes as soon as I step on set. I just get so happy.
Dude, I think most people on set are some type of Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, they're geniuses. And most of us didn't go to college. I don't think that intimidation ever ends. You're always gonna want to be doing something better than what you are. No one ever tells stories about things that went right. You know?
That's a great point.
Okay, here's what actually happened.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the podcast. Today, we talk with director Elle Brooks-Tao. Her work is known to send messages and pull heartstrings for brands like Nike, White Claw, and World Rugby. She's got a feature documentary under her belt and enough music videos and short films to prepare her for exactly what she's about to do next. Elle is also known not to be afraid to give her good, honest, from the heart point of view on what it's like to be a filmmaker. Let's just say I learned a few things, and I'm sure you will too. Also, do me a favor, just click subscribe. It helps. Now let's get into it. Elle Brooks-Tao, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I have a goal with this conversation. It's to gain insight into the human experience of being a filmmaker, but through the eyes of Elle Brooks-Tao.
Okay, that's scary. No, I'm just kidding.
No pressure.
ADHD, there's a lot of pieces to connect here, but I'll do my best.
I want to start with this thing with identity, calling yourself a director. I know you've spent some time in your career working crew jobs, from being an extra to working in camera department to ghostwriting, but talk to me about this transition into calling yourself a director. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent a really long time, well, to my standards, working through crew. So I started in film when I was 20. I didn't start trying to make stuff directing wise until I was 27. So it was a good 7 years. 7s are really important in my life. That's why I have this tattoo. And
Nice.
7 years. And then I think honestly what happened was I wanted more control. I felt like I was trying to get to know my voice. I didn't really know what I wanted to say directing yet. And so I just started making stuff with all of my little saved up pennies. And I did that with my DP, one of my best friends, Allison Anderson, and really close collaborator. And we made our first 10 commercial projects together. And then we made all of our personal work together. I think we had 1 year where we just decided to go for it. And then within that year, I was repped, and then she got repped pretty soon after. And at that point, we had put out 1 or 2 pieces. And okay, here's what actually happened. I pretended to be my own agent. So I made an email address with my real name, which was Michelle Brooks, like my birth name. And I emailed every news article, magazine, like film magazine online that I could think of, like Little Black Book and all of those guys. And I was like, there's a cool new director named Elle blah, blah, blah. And she's just made this, and I made my own press kit. I wrote my own articles that I had them, stills. And then it worked, and outlets started picking it up, and they started calling me directed by, and that's actually how it happened. So I literally, I don't know, squeezed my way in, pretending to hype myself up through a different name.
Yeah. And
once those people started calling me directors on paper, I figured I could call myself a director.
that is isn't that the epitome of faking it until you make it?
I think so, yeah. I was like, well, I am directing the work, I'm making the work, I'm writing the work. But I always would tell Allison, because she's a purist when it comes to creativity. And I was like, Allison, it doesn't matter. We can make something so good, and it doesn't matter if no one sees it. And so I would live and die by that statement, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a hard time with that, and still do. I know what it's like to be at a function, a party, catching up with grandma, and have to muster up the ego to say that I'm a film director. At the time I had some good work and was getting jobs, but playing the comparing game to everyone else can be dangerous. And it's like, what do I have that, I can use to consider myself to be the thing that I want to be. And I think it's cool to like let other people call you that first. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that intimidation ever ends. There's always going to be people who are making work that you want to make, or who inspire you, or who are here, when you're here. And
yeah,
I still, like, even when a barista in a coffee shop in LA asks me, like, oh, what do you do for work? I usually lie. I'm usually like, I'm a writer, or I proofread stuff or something, because I just feel like we live in LA, you're surrounded by people who are in the film industry, who are directing, or who are trying to direct. And I still feel like there's so many things that I'm trying to do that it's almost like even after 10 years of professionally directing, I don't know if I've gotten to a point where I want to own it. Like, I'm not sure what that point will be when I win an Oscar, maybe. But I am proud of it. Yeah. People have to remind me, like, Ellie, you have a documentary on Apple TV. Like, you've done a feature. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forget about that. I guess, yeah. But I don't think it ever ends, to be honest. You're always going to, like, want to be doing something better than what you are at whatever stage that you're at. And I think we need to just be proud of where we stand, wherever that is.
Yeah, I'm always interested in how we as creators identify with ourselves.
I fight with myself all the time. My younger self, I call her, like, baby Elle. I did some interviews way back when. I mean, literally probably 9 or 10 years ago. My first like features probably was in Music Bed and Film Supply, and when they had a magazine going, and 1.4. And I look back at those interviews sometimes, and I like reread them, not because I have a huge ego, but because I was trying to remind myself of what my most pure perspective was when I didn't know anything else. Like, what was the answer that came to my mind?
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to get jaded as time goes on. With this industry, it's really uncertain, it's really inconsistent, it's really difficult. And I swear it sounds so weird, but rereading interviews has helped me make fairly big decisions. Because I was just like, if 27-year-old Elle could just speak so freely and naively with such passion and, like, firmly believing the things that she's saying, I can suck up this feeling that I have, and I can do this, or, so it's helped. There is one thing that I almost took my credit off of, that I didn't feel like it represented me or the level of work that I can do. And it was a pretty big decision if I was going to take my name off of it, because it had been years of my life in the making. And, and I chose to just embrace it as part of my story. And I think a lot of directors are very hesitant to put their names on things that they don't feel completely represent them. But I look at pieces of work that people I love have done, and I see those people in it. And to me, it's the biggest lesson when I can see, like, I think the best example would be a bit of Chloe Zhao in, oh my gosh, now I'm going to butcher this. Is it Songs My Brothers Taught Me? It was her very first documentary that she did.
Yeah.
And it was really encouraging. So that would be like an example.
Yeah.
Of baby Elle helping big Elle.
Yeah. That's really cool, because self-awareness is so important, I think, just in general for anybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it's so cringy to go back and listen, or to see or watch or experience an old version of yourself. But you lean into that a little bit, do you?
Yeah, it's a little cringe, but you have to lean into it, because, that usually, like, our younger self is so pure. And I think as we get older, we get wiser. But there's something so lovable about a previous version of ourselves.
While we're talking about the previous version of ourselves, let's go back, like, all the way back, as far back as you want. What were the signs, that you were kind of born to be who you are today? A creator, a teller of stories.
Oh, I really love that question. No one's ever asked me that before, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Great question.
Now I'm really stoked to hear your answer.
I feel so seen. Wanting to be heard. I was always making up stories. When I was growing up, I was alone a lot. And it, not in a sad way, in kind of a beautiful way, but I was homeschooled. I had a little sister who I loved and probably bugged the shit out of me. So I was always running away and I was always like hiding where no one could find me. So at one point I took hedge clippers and I hollowed out this huge bush in our yard, and I would climb under the branches into this hollow with like a blanket and my book and my journal at like 7 years old. And I would hide in this bush the entire day. And I thought it was hysterical because all of my family would be running around the yard yelling like, Michelle, where are you? And I would just like hide under there, reading my book and writing stories all day long. And I was such a daydreamer. The daydreaming part is probably one of the banes of my existence. A guy broke up with me for daydreaming too much. Like, we dated for 4 years, and when I was 25, he broke up with me because he was like, you're not grounded in reality. I actually went to therapy for it. I felt scarred. I felt like it was a huge part of my existence that was being stomped on. And then I kind of realized there is a balance to be had. But I think the daydreaming is legitimately one of the biggest strengths in directing that I have, because I'll zone out for literally an hour or two, just thinking of scenes and stories and letting it play in my head. And then I'll go write it down. And it's almost as if I'm living in that world with whatever characters they are. And I've been doing that for as long as I can possibly remember. And I used to write books as a kid. I used to write like my life story down as if everyone would want to read it. You know, even I remember, it's one of my earliest memories at like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, writing poems and writing like, today, mom told me this, and something that was like very, I was destroyed over it. It's probably like, you couldn't go play with this friend or something. But I mean, I wonder if like being alone like that kind of brewed an environment for creativity, because I grew up somewhat homeschooled as well. Yeah. The oldest of 6, I always wanted to kind of, like, we were really bored. No TV. Yeah. You know, not a whole lot to do. And so like I would like make my own space for creativity, you know what I mean? And write books even before I could write. Like, I wanted to make a library, so I would go to my aunt and say, hey, can you write down what I tell you? And she would write books and ideas for me. But like I like constantly found myself in this place of like a lot of creative energy but nowhere to put it, so I would just like make my own. Yeah, you know? I love that you got yourself a ghostwriter as a kid. You like coined the term before it was coined in your life. Yeah. I was like, I don't know how to do the writing part, but I can do the story part. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. I think the daydreaming, I loved books. I was always really bad at math and really behind in science, and I almost failed out of those subjects in college. But English, history, stories, I would have an almost perfect grade all the way through in my life. And I think the idea of making people feel seen, because I think very often in my life I never felt seen. I always felt like I was like a spy, like I was undercover just watching all these people and trying to blend into the background so that I could listen into conversations. I was obsessed with being a spy as a kid. I always wanted to get like the sound equipment that could hear through walls and try to like listen in on my sister's phone calls or, with her boyfriend. Or like, I loved climb a tree and listen to conversations happening below. And I would climb trees and I would hang out there for actual hours until no one, knew where I was. So. Yeah. I mean, do you think there's anything in particular that happened when you were a kid, that you think allows you to create and tell the stories the way that you do today? I've always been a hugely optimistic person. It's really, really hard for me to be not optimistic. I definitely have moments. I have super low moments at times, like any normal person, but I'll bounce back pretty hard. Like I'm a trampoline with optimism. So I think as a kid, though, my mom went through quite a lot of health stuff growing up. So it impacted my life in a way that I didn't really figure out until I was an adult. She was in a very bad car accident when I was 7. And then we were together in a car accident, another very bad car accident when I was 9.
Wow.
And then she had a child with Down syndrome when I was 12 who passed away a couple weeks later. And then another really bad car accident when I was 15, which it's crazy because I wasn't actually buckled in, the one that we were in when I was 15, and someone hit our car going 60 miles an hour, ran a red light. And we were just turning out a parking lot. So I had my hand on the buckle, but I wasn't buckled, and I somehow did not fly out of the car. I just stayed right there. It didn't hurt my knee, anything. Just kind of like we spun in a circle, hit a sign, and I was there. And there's been a lot of those times, especially in cars, but just in general, where I've been in situations that I probably shouldn't have been in or couldn't help being in, like the car accidents. And I have just been okay. And I think it's made me think a lot about existence. And I think it's made me think a lot about that life is very short, especially with my mom and watching her be in very dire health circumstances. I knew my way around hospitals as a kid. And yeah, it just makes you think very seriously about deep concepts as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. I think I grew up a little bit fast and was very much a caretaker. And so it's almost impossible for me not to be able to relate to hard things when I put people on camera or I'm trying to get into an emotion that an actor is feeling, or I need to make up a scenario, to get it there. But a lot of times when people meet me, they're like, wow, you're so happy. And I think, my work, I've been trying to make happier, more hopeful work. But I think when I started, my work is a little bit dark. And one of my goals for this year is to make work that's like genuinely happy and makes people laugh and is relatable and embraces the lighter side of life, because that's in me. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at a lot of your work, a lot of the stories are like really heavy, focused on deep human truths, big issues, right? So you think growing up the way that you did had something to do with your ability to tell stories like that in a really evocative way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not afraid of hard topics. I actually love diving into hard topics. It's the quickest way to get to know someone, and I feel like I can be a safe person for listening. But I think also because I'm such an optimist and because I always believe that there's a silver lining, one of my biggest beliefs, I think maybe it was a coping mechanism as a kid, was to think, whatever the worst thing is, I'm going to believe it's actually going to be the best thing. And if it's in between, that's boring. So like, if it's really terrible, then I'm just going to believe that it's actually the thing that I couldn't live without, like at some point in time.
Wow.
And I still think that, absolutely, because I've seen, maybe it's manifested in my life or something, but I've seen that happen so many times. And I think that the deeper you go into the tough stuff, the brighter the climax can be, I guess, when you get there. I love thinking about a character's worst fear realized. That's the point in a script, where you suddenly are challenged. You're, as an audience, you're leaning in and you're asking yourself subconsciously, what kind of man or what kind of woman are they going to become now? Like, what's the choice? How are they going to respond to the worst fear realized in front of them? Because we all have so many fears in our life, so many insecurities.
Oh, yeah.
And so with character and with people and actors, it doesn't matter, whoever, I'm always like, let's just get there. Because I want to see what you do. And I think it's going to be great. Yeah.
I want to ask you about, we talked about your childhood and building these things that, we use in order to do our work and tell our stories. But do you think we have control over those creative tendencies, like the subconscious in creativity? I just love that topic.
Yeah, the subconscious. Do we have control? I'm going to repeat the question back. Do we have control over where the subconscious brings us, or over whether we're creative?
No, I think granted that we're creative, our gut, where we come from, and do we have control over that? Do you think?
Yeah. I think everything's a choice. I mean, I could give you the woo answer and just be like, no, just like lean into where, but I do feel that we have choices in life. And I think we have choices over our mindsets, and we have choices over how much we lean in to grasping creativity. And I think especially as, with every year that we get older, we have choices over how we talk to ourselves, like how we talk to our inner child, and encourage that little kid inside of us that just wants to make shit, like how we talk to them and encourage them. And I think a lot of us are so hard on ourselves that we just never pursue things as hard as we might have, when we were younger. So that's something I've been really working at, trying not to lose, and actually trying to go back to this year is like a more brave pursuit of creativity.
I want to talk about the progression of your work. I know for me, I can look back at specific moments where there were like clear growth in a big way.
Yeah.
What were some of those for you?
Well,
for some people, it's like gear, a relationship, a mistake, an epiphany.
I mean, one of the progressions would be when I got signed to direct, because that was, almost a decade ago, because suddenly you're handed resources to make stuff with, and you're given relationships. So, that's kind of a clear progression. But I think creatively, I don't know, maybe I'm just moving into it right now, to be honest. I think knowing exactly what I want to say, which I only feel is happening in the last year, to be honest. That would be, and I know it sounds kind of stereotypical, owning your voice. But I think honestly, with directing and writing and creating, you don't know your voice when you're first starting out. You're constantly figuring out how to better convey your thoughts and give and round out a character's world. And so, yeah, I think one of the biggest progressions for me would be the opportunity to write a feature, which I'm writing now and I'm a co-writer on. That was a lot of work, and that was a big chance. But I've been forced to just use some muscles and stretch some muscles that I haven't before. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. How's that going, by the way?
It's great. It's really fun. When I released my documentary a few years ago, someone presented me with a narrative feature opportunity, and it was really fun characters, and I felt the structure needed a bit of work. So I rewrote pretty much a page one outline on that. And they were very kind and accepted me as a co-writer. And so now I'm writing the script, and it's been so much fun because I feel like my daydreaming can be at a max. And the only weird part is that it's based in very dirty South Texas. And I was raised very conservatively, and I was not allowed to listen to any music but country music until I was in 8th grade, like country and Christian music. And so there's a very long time where I could not turn on a country song. And because I write to music 100% of the time, I have been having country on blast on my headphones for the entirety of writing the outline and script. And so it's been a really weird, kind of fun, world-shifting exercise. But yeah, I'm getting into the world for sure.
Let's talk about the appetite for long form in general.
Yeah.
I've been in this mode of creating for YouTube, for Instagram. It's all about hooks and retaining attention, being succinct with how you deliver content.
Yeah.
Do you think this has affected more traditional long form narrative work and how people consume it?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, it 100% has. I think, okay, if we're talking about how everything could be a nuanced conversation, short form and getting to the point is definitely a gift. It's definitely a strength. Sometimes we try to make too many points in like a short amount of time. long form is just a different art form where you can sit with something. So I think it's completely changed how we speak a message. Social media, we want to hear one point, and we're not, I think maybe the point starts a conversation, but I don't think the point is the conversation, you know, when we're making something. So I think I have come to, whenever I get a pitch in or do some work on a script that someone gives me for a commercial, I'm thinking, okay, is there a point they're trying to make? And is the point the start of a conversation, or is the point the conversation? That's probably the number one thing that I go into a pitch with in looking at like an agency's commercial script. With a music video or with long form, obviously you have the freedom to learn a lesson through it. I'm not sure that we're learning a lesson or if we have a huge takeaway from, you know, a 60-second commercial. Although I could think of a few where they've done a good job, but maybe most of them not.
Yeah. Do you think it's affected your motivation towards wanting to make movies?
I think what's affected my motivation towards wanting to make movies has been how long it takes to make movies. Impatience. Yeah, no, I feel so grateful for short form work because I never went to film school. I never had toys to play with. I never had teachers that taught me the craft. Every single ounce of my learning has come from being physically on set.
Yeah, physically being on set. I mean, I know for me how important it is. But how much do you love being on set? Is it like a big part of it or not so much? Oh my gosh,
being on set is the reason I keep trying to make films. It really is. It's the driver.
We'll dive into that.
Why? Yeah. If I couldn't be on set, I think I would go get a different job. I'd go like design jewelry or teach kids how to surf or something. I just wouldn't. It's hard not to be hands-on. Being on set is like home to me. It's my happy place. There is like a joy that comes as soon as I step on set, and it's impossible to hide. I just get so happy. And yeah, I love working with so many people where everyone is so hardworking and so talented at their individual job. And you have one of almost every profession around you. You've got a carpenter, you've got, you know, an interior designer, you've got like someone who does the finances, you know, you've got so many different brains and artistic types of people and skilled people that it just makes me laugh. Like when I was shooting in London about 2 months ago, we were on our last shot and we had a pro rugby player that was all, the shot was very simple. It was just her running up a hill. It was supposed to be 6 a.m. We were shooting it around 8 p.m. and suddenly a street light turned on. And it was a rush because we're like, wait, we need to get that street light off. Nothing's continuous. And so right away, there's just 3 people who ran over, did something and turned the street light off. And I was just laughing because I was like, no normal person knows how to do this. Like if you were walking down the sidewalk and I just felt like I didn't want the street light on, I wouldn't know how to just turn it off, like access the electrical grid in the city and turn it off. So it was just cracking me up. And I actually took a video of it because it was one of those moments where I just was like, this is why I love film, because people know how to do the most random things in the world. I'd be so bored doing something else.
Dude, I think most people on set are some type of Swiss Army knife within their field.
They're geniuses. And most of us didn't go to college. You know, most of us, like,
they could
I was a
probably be
waitress.
engineers of some type.
Yeah.
When you walk on set, you know, enough, you start to realize just by what they're wearing or what movements they're making or where they're positioned, what they do. And I love like looking for the person where I have like no clue what it is that they're doing and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Describe it to me. It's probably different for you and me because you look your age. When I walk on set, everyone thinks that I am like a production assistant. 20. Yeah, nothing against production
15.
assistants. I was one, but I look super, super young. And I know that. So when I walk on set, people will walk up and they'll ask me like, "Do you mind grabbing me a coffee?" And I'll go do it because I actually like love serving people.
You'll go do that.
I do, awesome. Yeah. I think it's hilarious. And so I'll stand in line, I'll get coffee, I'll give them their coffee, and then I'll go sit in my director chair and be like, "All right, back to it." Honestly, when you show up on set as a director, you are in the way for the first 2 hours anyway. People are doing their thing, they're lighting, like they don't want you around. They don't want you hovering. So right. I'm like, yeah, let me see what I can do. But I think it's hysterical. But it also lets me be a little bit of a spy because I can just kind of like stand around and hear what people are saying. But I love eating lunch with production assistants when I'm on set because to me they're at the beginning of their career and they have so much ahead of them, and the people that you're around when you're at that stage are hugely important in shaping how you're going to handle situations moving forward, a little bit of knowledge, decisions, whether or not you keep going or you drop out in a few years when things get tough. And I love sitting and listening and just being able to chat. Because when I was a production assistant, I had a really hard few years. I quit film, actually, and deleted every contact out of my phone because I was so burnt out. And I said I'm never coming back. And then I did go back. But there's a few people that made a huge difference in my life. Yeah.
When you walk on set and you know it's going to be a long day, you know what you're in for. Where do your eyes go first?
I put music on. I think the number one thing that I'll do is I have a little journal and my Bose headphones, and usually because I'll be in the way if I'm getting into the lighting too early, I'll literally find a staircase or like a closet and I'll sit in there with music on that kind of gets me into a focused mode and jot down a few thoughts for two reasons. I mean, the first one is to be ready to, once we get going, I'm there. I'm 100% present and I'm ready for the actors and I have all the direction in my head and I've thought through every scenario and I'm, no one's going to be waiting on me. So there's the logistical type. But I also think that the energy that you walk onto a set with it affects how people go home at night, and it affects how they experience their job and whether they like film or not. And I want everyone to like film. So I worked on quite a few really miserable sets for years when I was younger. And one of the things that still gives me the most joy about directing today is being able to try to lead well. So, yeah. It's a lot of power to have too. I mean, we all know what good sets and bad sets are like. And when the power is put in your hands to foster a good set, I just love that you take that seriously. I do too. There's been a few times where I've lost my temper, or very few and far between. It's hard to do. Like if I've gotten to that point, something pretty bad is happening. But usually I'll like throw my coffee on the ground, or I'll throw like my fanny pack on the ground. I'll be like, oh, and whatever crews around me always starts laughing, and that's when I know I've been doing a good job because they're not taking me seriously. So they're just like, oh, Els, that's like your version of upset. All right. They'll just start laughing. But I am actually upset, but it's not coming across. Yeah. I know you love music. Let's talk about music videos. Yeah. Let's talk about them. You've done a few, yeah? Yes, I've done a few. I think when we were chatting before, I told you I've never taken a fee for a music video. I don't know. That'll probably change in the future, realistically, if I do more of them. But they've always been like a passion of mine. I love honoring songs. I feel like if I wasn't so shy as a kid, I would have let my mom put me into voice lessons. She tried and I cried the whole way through. And the voice teacher was like, I can't work with this kid. I was so shy. I was paralyzingly shy for a lot of my life. Really? Yes. Paralyzingly. That's shocking for me to hear. I know. I'm not shy anymore. Exactly. But as a kid being homeschooled, you're not always like the most developed. So I think a lot of times I just felt like I didn't have the words. And so I would be very quiet. And
so what happened? How did you go from being this terribly shy person to who you are now, so extroverted and able to conduct something like a film set?
I think I loved teamwork. Sports happened when I went into school.
Okay.
In high school, I did track. The first summer you're doing cross country and going on very long runs, 8 miles, 9 miles. I literally remember that I don't think I spoke to one person the entire summer, even though I was running next to them for an hour and a half at a time. And then I just slowly came out of my shell. There was a few people who just befriended me and made me feel, included. And I don't know, I think then my extrovert nature took over. And I loved the idea of working on a team. And documentary filmmaking probably was, I did that. I had a VHS camera that I would record everything on in high school, and I would always make the videos that would be shown for different events. And I think that was my way of like getting people to talk to me. It was selfish. But yeah, I think that's what changed. And now I love making people feel included and trying to make people feel seen. And I think why I wanted to make films in the first place is because I knew that if you make films, someone can watch a film and not feel so alone. So
yeah, there's this human interaction we all need and crave, and it's fun to think of that we can get that even being alone while watching something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And then we have the ability to like create that for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about work-life balance.
Okay.
Because I think this is something I've heard you talk about before, right? I mean, most people in the film industry can relate to those shifting seasons of things being busy, things being slow. How do you find homeostasis?
I think I'm checking myself right now. I've put a massive spotlight on my physical health and mental health, especially this last year. Life happens. You can work any career and you're going to go through seasons of life that are really hard. Maybe you lose a family member or a friend. Maybe, you have a health issue, or maybe you just have a down season financially, or who knows? I don't know. We all go through whatever that thing is. For me personally, I went through a divorce years ago. That was really hard to keep working. My health took a really bad toll. Like working so much. I was a huge workaholic. Partially because I loved to work, partially because I'm a super high achiever and a perfectionist, partially because I, was like just very passionate. But work took the place of dealing with things, I think, at a season in my life. And so there was a lot of things that I realized that I was ignoring about my physical health, my mental health, friendships, relationships, just not showing up for people the way that I wanted to. And I started to take that really seriously. And I think about 4 years ago when I moved to LA, I went through a bit of a metamorphosis where, COVID for everyone was, a point where you kind of were forced to slow down. And so, the night that COVID was announced in New York City as having like officially entered the city, I remember that I was crying to myself because I had committed to so many projects, whether personal projects, my feature that I was on, and trying to continue with commercials simultaneously. Which have no consistent schedule to them, that I realized that the only way that I could keep up with all of these commitments that I made was if I slept 3 hours a night. Like when I divided everything into hours of work time during the other 24 hours that I had, I would have 3 hours of sleep. And I realized that I'm contractually committed to all of these things. Like I'm not sure what to cut out or how to slow down. And I had gotten myself into a bit of a hole. And when COVID happened, naturally things panned out. But yeah, that was one thing. And then that started the work-life balance shift. And then I would even say that getting a divorce makes you really look at yourself. And so I think anyone who's been through a bad breakup or something like a divorce you've probably, hopefully, done some work. And so I just did some serious work, and I think that has made me really passionate about encouraging other people to prioritize things like, I think, physical and mental health. But yeah, the way that I do it personally every day is I exercise every day. If I don't feel like exercising, I'll go for a long walk, around the neighborhood. I start every morning with a walk, and like I'll walk in a loop around where my house is in my neighborhood, and I'll just pray for every house to my right. And just like thinking about those people that I've never met and what they might be going through or dealing with. And it's just a way to like get outside of myself. And then I surf. Travel is like hugely fulfilling, and physical health wise, like last January, my health completely collapsed on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had had a really hard summer and fall, and then in January I went to Japan, and I just had like a piece of bad sushi, and it kicked my health. I suffered for about a month. I never went to the hospital because I just was like mind over matter. And then I basically started like internally bleeding and ended up in the hospital and had to like, it was honestly, I think it was like years of health issues that stacked up. And these days I feel like every other person I know has an autoimmune issue. It's not so rare. And mine ended up to be not so bad, but I completely changed my eating. I completely stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped drinking coffee for the most part. I started taking like all the supplements and getting IVs. And now when I go on jobs, I'm not staying out until 2 a.m. I'm not like eating like crap. I just have more of a balance. And I guess I feel like I'm saying things that are so generic to health, but it's weird to actually like have to put them into action. Maybe it's just also getting older. I don't know.
Well, it might be some of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm approaching my mid-30s, but also they're generic because they work, because it's true. You hear the same things all the time because it's what truth is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I go to the beach almost every morning and journal. And that's been actually something where I don't feel that I can write or work on my script or any concept until I've taken time to like, I read about 2 books a week. So I'll read a few chapters and then I'll journal, and then I'll get into being creative because it'll spur like a piece of my brain, that needs to be activated. So that to me would be like health, Yeah. Yeah.
So important.
I don't want to like preach at people, but that's like my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do a new segment with you.
Okay.
We're going to do a rapid fire Instagram post where I pull up a picture and you explain what's going on.
Okay. I just cleared out most of my Instagram. I'm doing a big rebrand, so this is going to be fun. Whatever's on there is probably meaningful.
Okay. You're clearly excited about something. What was going on here? What got you so excited?
Oh, this is so good. Okay, I was in Ireland shooting with some of my favorite people in the world. My producer, Rebecca, who's one of my best friends, and another really good friend, Kate McCullough, who's this insanely talented director of photography, and I don't get to work with her that often. So we were back together, and I'd worked with this team for at least like three, maybe more times at that point. It was just after my birthday, and I was in a good mood. And basically, we were in this bar called Whelan's in Dublin, and Kate had lit it to be essentially a concert scene. And we were slow motion confettiing, and we had all of these jams from like the early 2000s playing in the background as we prepped. And I was just in such a good mood, and I just started dancing like all by myself in the corner. And Kate came over and started taking this video and then sent it to me. So that's what the video is. I was just like happy to be around my people And this is the epitome of how I feel when I step on a film set also.
Yeah. I was gonna say this looks like what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. You'll find me dancing badly in a corner like at some point on a film set or doing the work.
That's awesome. This is the kind of director energy that I want to be around when I'm on set.
Yeah, it's like Energizer
sure.
Bunny. It never stops. Never stops.
What about this? What was going on here in this moment?
That's like, wow, these are probably two of my favorite memories on film sets. This memory, I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, and I had the best conversations of my life on this trip, even to this day. We were filming for Goldman Sachs for their nonprofit 10,000 Women, which funds women's businesses and women entrepreneurs in Nigeria. And so the woman that we had gone there to film, she was absolutely broke, and she started selling this bean cake called moin moin outside of her son's school. And she opened up a restaurant, became hugely successful, got funded by Goldman Sachs, and now teaches other abused women to open restaurants. And
well,
I was being interviewed about that in this moment. And the crew was amazing. Nigerians are just another like breed of creativity. They are so creative. And I think I just felt so infused by their very poetic speakers and a poetic culture. And I made some of my best friends on this trip that were producing for me. And yeah, I after this interview, I went home back to New York. I had to fly home the next day, and I cried when my plane hit the tarmac because I was just like,
wow,
wanted to go back. But yeah, that's what was going on.
Yeah.
I was so happy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can tell. I can see that. What about this?
Oh, wow. Wow, you dug. Okay. I bought my first house in Nashville. First house. I bought my house, a house. In California, it's definitely not possible to buy something here anymore. So I was at my best friend, Fleury, Lauren. She is a music artist that we became really good friends over Instagram. And then she's absolutely my best friend today. And I directed a bunch of music videos for her. I was in her wedding, and I had gone there for her wedding. And her brother-in-law is a realtor, and we started chatting. And then I think like 6 weeks later, he helped me find a house, and it's like my dream house. And so we bought that. And Winston and I, when we were first dating.
Yeah, who's that guy in the picture?
That's my husband. That's Winston Tao, another very talented director. When we were dating, we would walk around our neighborhood and we would take selfies in front of these like baller houses. And we knew we could never afford a house like that, but we would dream of it, you know? And so we would always take selfies in front of other people's houses. And
That's
very
awesome.
often we get caught. It'd be very like an awkward explanation. But this was like our selfie in front of our house that we finally got. Not in California, but yeah, it was a special moment.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
What's going on in your head here?
Oh,
Very intense.
This was 2 a.m. on a fake moon landing site. We were in Florida, I think in Orlando, shooting with Buzz Aldrin, and we had made a fake like moon crater, and they were moving moon rocks, and I was staring at the monitor, and I was just like being really, really, really picky about where each of the moon rocks went, because it wasn't a humongous budget, and so we were completely faking this moon landing. And all day Buzz Aldrin had been like, Elle, what are you making the moon sand out of? And like questioning me, and I was very nervous about it being believable for a guy who actually freaking went to the moon. And he was giving me all this information about texture and what it looked like. And so, yeah, I was being really annoying to everyone around me in this moment at 2 a.m.
Yeah, no pressure with a guy like that.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Wow. This one.
Oh.
Little older picture's a little older than the
rest. My gosh, 1995. I would have been 7 or 8 years old, and I hated ballet. I hated this outfit too, but it's such a cute picture of me as a kid. And I think I posted it because I guess it's an epitome. It's like confident, it's cute. My mom put me in ballet for a total of like, I think a year or two. I was way too ADHD to be in ballet. I corrupted the whole class with laughter, I think. And I, it's the best way I could put it. The teacher I think I was really annoying because I'd always be like, I could not hold a pose. I would just be like, blah, like I'd go crazy. And I just remember this outfit that I hated the color pink. I hated the way the arm things felt. And the thing on my head, I walked around like that for like a good week when my mom would put that on my head just to make a point. Yeah. So this outfit is like hysterical to me. Yeah.
What you doing here?
How did you find these?
This is under, so I went to your tagged photos on Instagram. I got I dug a little deep.
Oh my gosh. What is happening here? Okay,
like
I have to remind myself.
Imaginary.
Whew. Okay. This was in Uruguay. And in front of me, what you don't see on the camera are 12 6-year-olds who I turned into superheroes. And I won this pitch because it was for Ziploc, who partnered with Marvel in, I think, one of the Avengers films, and we turned them all into little superhero Avengers. But try getting 12 6-year-old Spanish speaking kids. My Spanish is okay, but it's not great. Super hyperactive to do like stunt moves for you. It was not fun, and we did it. It turned out great, but I was motioning to Captain America how I wanted him to like jump into a laundry basket. He just kept calling me Princesa Capitan, which means princess captain. So that made my day. That was my name.
Princess Captain. I love it.
Yeah.
Explain this.
So many arms. This was for Dick's Sporting Goods. This was so fun. We shot with Brandi Chastain, and her double, Meg, is behind me watching, and I'm motioning. There's a moment in the 1999 World Cup where Brandi Chastain, who was part of one of our most prolific USA soccer teams, when the U.S. won, she went to her knees and very much like you'd see a man celebrate, just like ripped off her shirt and had her sports bra on. She's just like, yeah. And so I was motioning how I wanted Meg to like drop to her knees, and kind of explaining to the Steadicam guy where we needed to land with her. Yeah, so that was that. It's fun.
Nice. Were you grabbing a Big Mac? Here.
Oh my gosh, this was for Independent Women's Day. Wow, you really dug. That was 340 weeks ago. It was amazing.
Beautiful piece, by the way.
Thank you. I stood up for this piece. There was a moment where, I won't say who, someone wanted to not make this about women and only make it about the McDonald's logo. And it was honoring a woman who had had a huge impact in her community with other women. And so I had called my EP. It was maybe one of my first times truly standing up for something I believed in when it came to a commercial. It was like shaking in my boots. I had just finished a half marathon, and I called my EP and I was like, I don't think I can do this job if we take all the women stuff out. And so what you see here in the background that you can only glimpse it. You can see a piece of the M above my head.
Fair.
And it was being flipped to turn into a W for International Women's Day. And this was very early in the morning. I think it was probably about 5 a.m. in the morning. We were shooting in Compton. And it was really cool. This was like definitely honoring a life lived with the woman that we ended up focusing on. So, yeah.
That's awesome. E&G style.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
This picture, I went back to my roots. One of my first freelance jobs was doing sports videography for soccer games, for women's professional soccer games. And so we were filming Nike down in Memphis, a really cool high school girls rugby team. Memphis is, the zip code that we were shooting in is the #1 child poverty zip code in the nation. And the girls that we were shooting with were so badass. And so I just like grabbed this camera and I wanted to film them myself, sports style from the sidelines when I was directing them. And so that's what you see here. Logan Triplett is the DP that filmed the rest of this. He's amazing, and like props to him for letting me get in there with a camera and not minding that. That was super cool. And you can kind of see the girls in the background, but we were there for 3 weeks and it was really special. I still have a relationship with a lot of them today.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've had quite the career for how young you are.
Thanks. I sometimes I think I am, gosh, I forget all of these amazing experiences. Yeah.
What about this one?
That was my most recent commercial. Well, one of my most recent commercials that I did. And I just like always don't know what to do in photos. So I do the peace sign.
Nice.
Yeah, that was like a chill. And like one of the rare moments where I'm actually sitting in my director chair. I have a bad habit where I'm never behind the monitor. I'm always with the talent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly love to be on set. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get off, right, how do you know that it's been a good day or a bad day?
I honestly think there's like, is there a bad day on set?
That's a good question. A lot of people would probably say yes.
Yeah.
I know some crew members that would say
definitely people that would say yes.
I know some gaffers that would say every day is a bad day.
This is the like the optimism coming in, that maybe unhealthy optimism. I black out things that are hard. Okay, a good day on set would be a day that you just don't want to leave set, you know, where you feel like you made something really special. I think there's a good day when everything's gone to plan and it's been smooth.
Yeah.
And then there's like a good day when you know that the whole crew feels like we just made something really special here. We like can't wait to see it edited, and everyone was able to pour in from a personal place. That's like a really good day. There's something on my Instagram where we're by the ocean that I would call that a good day. Like, this was a special project that we did for an artist who had lost his friend, and we were making it in honor of like reimagining his friend's steps. And so on the first image, what you see, Aina Hardwick, that picture was actually taken at 4 a.m. by the sea in Tramore, Ireland. And I was on about an hour of, actually I did not sleep. We had filmed for about 19 hours before. Aina is an amazing actor. Leon is the DP there. You can see the artist and the producer in other photos. And this was just such a great project to be able to have been a part of, and was just really meaningful. But what had happened was the tide came in faster than we thought the night before. Our light went away. The water was super vicious, and we couldn't finish the ending of the film. So and the ending was the whole film. So I had asked Aina, the actor, if he would mind getting up at 4 and basically going like back in the water and doing the last couple of lines. And so what you're seeing here is when we finished that last scene and we got it, and we knew that it was amazing. And it was beautiful. The sun was rising. So that's like what I would say is like a really, really, really good memory. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite days on set are when I've put so much prep into something special. It's usually a shot or a scene where it all comes down to like one moment, and then something unexpected happens. And all of this shit just hits the fan, but then you solve it anyway. And then you walk away at the end of the day knowing that not only did you solve it, but you made it was probably better than what you had originally planned.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it happens so often, sometimes unfortunately, but it's, there's so much bliss that happens in days like that on set.
Is that something about us as filmmakers? Like, if you work in film, do you just love to be tortured? Because I like when you just said that, I'm like, yeah, that is actually the best feeling. I think you nailed it. Like, the best feeling is when something happens and then you have to tackle it. You're given a challenge and it becomes a big adventure. And then it's a story that you're going to tell for the rest of your life about how you got that moment, because it could have been the end of you, but it ended up being like the thing that made the story or the film or the character. And that really is the best day, the best feeling. That is.
It's like, that's how the reward system works, isn't it? The reward is greater when you've gone through more strife than you typically would, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. No one ever tells stories about things that went right. We always tell stories about the things that went really wrong, and we got through it. It's how you make really good friends too.
100%. That's how you make good friends with strangers.
Yes.
When the truck breaks down and then you're begging people to tow the process trailer with their truck instead. You know what I mean? Like that's when you make really good friends.
Oof, man, it's so true. It's so true. That's one of the best parts. You'd be like an excuse to talk to strangers again.
Yes. Yeah. You come as extroverted as I know that you are these days. You come across as someone who likes to talk to strangers.
Oh, I love talking to strangers.
Can you just tell me about that? Why?
I think I'm just so curious about people. I want to hear everyone's life story. I feel like I have an inherent belief. We're alive, so we have a story, but everyone has such a story inside of them. They've all been through so many things. And I'm just like, one of these days, maybe curiosity will kill the cat or something, but I love asking strangers about their stories, and I have a bad habit of doing it at probably the most inconvenient times. Like, I'll go to a coffee shop and I'll be working on my script and I'll have a deadline, and an interesting person will sit down next to me and I'll figure out a way to start up a conversation with them. And honestly, I think maybe it's a way of research for characters, probably.
Yeah.
In my head, there is like a selfish motivation to it. But I've talked to people who, they toured with the Beatles back in the day as like a fill-in drummer. There is a guy at this coffee shop. I honestly would have thought he was homeless if I didn't start talking to him. And then he sat down, he talked to me for like 2 hours about his life as a musician in LA in the 70s and the 60s. And it was just so fascinating. And the other day, I go to this place called the Cow's End in LA, and I journal there almost every morning. It's by Venice Beach. And I love Venice Beach because I feel like everyone just wears their heart on their sleeve. There's a lot of kind of messed up people. There's a lot of homeless. There's a lot of mentally ill people. But at the end of the day, it's refreshing because you're just seeing what people are feeling. And most people aren't hiding it very well. And this guy sat down.
Yes.
This guy sat down behind me, and he just started talking to me. He was definitely off his rocker. He was definitely probably a little mentally ill. And he's just like, LA is a fucking shithole. And I was like, that's interesting. So I just turned around and I was like, yeah, man. And
just to relate to you for a second.
Yeah.
Hours ago, I'm prepping for this conversation with you. I'm in a coffee shop and there's a guy, there's usually at least one guy who goes very often or may not have a home in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And they usually like have the most stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy had like an array of phones like stacked around him. And he was like doing something very technical. And I was like, "Sup, dude? What are you doing?" And then I'm like, 45 minutes later, you know what I mean? He's telling me about the routes he takes and how Red Robin will let him sit and do his thing all day and McDonald's won't. And it was just like, I totally know what you mean about just this desire to talk to anybody and just try and like understand the human condition in ways that I physically can't,
I think we have to, right? Like as filmmakers, we have to broaden our perspective of how we see the world that's outside of like our life. And so it's a way of doing that, right? Like you want to sit and talk to people and get those stories. And I mean, that's hysterical about the phones. I have a bad habit. I have multiple notes in my notes app where one is just walking around New York City, what I hear people say in New York whenever I'm there. And I'll just write down sentences of conversations that I'm hearing next to me, whether I'm walking or on the subway or in a coffee shop. And then I have another one of those for LA. I'm totally creeping on people. And then I often record, I record probably very illegally my conversations with Uber drivers all the time. Because like before I get in an Uber, I'll push record on my voice notes on my phone, and I'll just start having conversations with them because they have the most interesting stories, the most interesting stories. Awesome. And I also have a Spotify playlist just of what's playing in Ubers when I'm in there and taxis, like all around the world.
That's amazing.
Nigeria,
wow. It's
Dublin,
usually...
London, here. Like I've got the best songs from
I bet
whatever.
You do.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. It's usually the Uber driver who wants to do all the talking and the rider who doesn't want to talk.
There's definitely times where I'm like, get me out of here, where I've had my producer call me and like fake needing me to talk to him about something. But for the most part, I think it's really, really, really interesting. And I actually usually walk away feeling super encouraged by people's lives because everyone has a reason that they're doing Uber and they have a whole other life on the other side of things. So. Yeah,
100%. I love your sensibility towards humans in general and your point of view on the world. A lot of people I think are like annoyed with the way things are in the world and the hum of a city, but to come across to someone who like finds that as fuel, I just find it very interesting.
I feel like if you feel like you don't know what to say as a filmmaker, you're probably not listening hard enough to what's around you. Because it's our whole job to observe life and then put it on the screen. That's the job. And that only happens by like watching and listening. So
yeah, totally.
Is there anything that's like technical that you have a question about? Because I know that I've spouted off a whole lot of like existential ideals. But anything like craft wise that you're curious about?
Yeah, I mean, I am so interested in how people write treatments and how people pitch. Because, look, any project that you see that's like a really big undertaking, there's usually a pitch, a treatment that's been written and won, and treatments and pitches that have been lost along that process as well. So, yeah, talk to me about your process for that.
So I used to do treatments for other directors before I started directing and before I was repped for directing. So I had the luxury of seeing how a lot of different types of directors put their ideas together.
Nice.
And it taught me a lot. I think what I've gone back to for myself is I have a few rules. Number one, there's gotta be one foundational rule that we always go back to. Every single page should lead back to this rule. It could be a feeling, a theme, a purpose for the footage, where we want it to land with the audience. It could be the idea of something as simple as like light and dark. It could be there, but there's always probably a phrase, a quote, or a word that I will base an entire project off of, and I hold myself accountable to that, because otherwise a project can be 1,000 different things. It can go in 1,000 different directions, and then after the treatment process, you just pile on more people into the the creation of it. So it can get very convoluted and very watered down by the end. And I feel like your job as a director is to protect it from getting watered down. So you have to know what the actual vision is and you have to stick to it. So for me, that's the number one thing is what's the word or what's the quote? What's the one piece of inspiration that is strong enough to anchor everything else about the cinematography, who we choose to shoot it, who we choose to produce it, where we shoot it, the performance in every shot, you know, how we frame the shots. Like everything has to be anchored to this one idea. And I think it's tempting to be like, oh, I have this one project and I want to be selfish and I want to play with all of these different ideas or these different styles. But I think it's really important to just own a cohesive voice per project. So that'd be my one thing. And then
That's great. Wow.
My other rule is pretty simple, but I really try to speak bluntly in my treatments. I don't feel like I need to over-explain or be flowery about something. If the idea is strong enough, you don't need many words to explain it. And that's something that I'm always thinking of and I'm always trying to get better of. When I was a production assistant, my first few years that I did it, I was on huge features. I was on Ben Affleck features and Tom Cruise feature films. And you're one of between 300 and 900 people, depending on how many units there are. So you're a spec. And when you're on the radio, you've got an open radio that a couple hundred people are listening to. The rule as a production assistant that we were always told was 3 words or less. And so in my head, I'm bad at this, but I'm always thinking about it is how can I say this? Could I say this in 3 words or less? If I had to, what would the 3 words be? And then I'll make a paragraph out of that, like 1 paragraph, not 2, not 3, like 1. And I'll make a headline. And I feel that the strongest idea should be the simplest in nature. So yeah,
that is so strong.
That's my treatment approach. Yeah.
Technically, how are you building it? Are you building it or do you have help?
I do build it. I mean, these days I do have a degree of help, but I have realized that my process is building the treatment. It helps me tactilely figure things out. So I feel like I can't communicate a message unless I'm to a degree like in control of the size and the color and the spacing of where the font is on the page and how you're reading things and how they flow and where the image is. To me, it's all something that is really specific and it's all a reflection of the feeling that you get when you read the treatment. So I build them in InDesign and I have a bad habit. I want to make a new layout for every single job because to me everything is like a brand.
Yeah.
I've had to get better about not doing that, but I have selfish times where for fun I'll just go in and start to play around with new layouts and things that convey an image or a feeling. And I've actually started doing things a lot less literally. I think a lot of directors, especially for a commercial treatment or a music video treatment, will go very basic. It'll be like your intro, hello, and then your approach, kind of your summary, and then you go into maybe cinematography or you go into the script and then you go into like your actors' locations, your wardrobe and everything. And there's nothing wrong with doing that at all. It's how I've done it for years. But lately I've been trying to be maybe like a little less boring. You know, people are reading treatments. Most of my treatments are between 35 and 75 pages. So if someone's taking the time to read all of that, I want to make it fun. I want to make it like a story. And so I'll just honestly kind of throw the titles out the window and it'll be a conscious stream of thought through the whole treatment instead. So it'll be like, I won't say like approach or this or that. I'll be like, if let's say it's for like Nike or Adidas, I'll be like, what I talk about when I talk about running, you know, and then that'll be the idea. So it's a bit more of a, just like a conscious flow of thought. So yeah, I do start with images first. I feel that I can't write unless I do images, but everyone's different. Winston would definitely do writing first and then images. So some people start with sound. Different. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a place you get images?
Frameset?
Shout out Frameset!
No, legitimately, I will legitimately say, before you reached out about this podcast, I went through my subscriptions and I realized that I was paying for an insane amount of subscriptions every month. And I went through and I whittled it down to only my favorite ones. And Frameset made the cut. So I do legitimately, I think
no
like
freaking way.
Your site is really well set up and it's got like high res images and it's super easily searchable. It's probably my favorite out of all of them. Yeah. Not just
Well, you didn't need to do that.
I do also look in really random places. I look at a ton of photography and just like street photography. And it's taken a lot of curation to find the right blogs and things that you can find that are high res online. But these days, because Amazon and most of the outlets have blacked out like how you can pull screen grabs from shows or movies, you can't just like go find the image exactly that you want from a movie. You know, you've got to kind of like find it as a still somewhere. And so I've tried to get more creative with where I find things, because otherwise I'm a little scared that treatments will end up feeling very similar, you know, between directors sometimes for concepts.
Yeah. I want to switch over to some big questions.
Ooh, okay.
Lessons. We all learn them along the way. What are some big ones that you've learned?
Don't be afraid to walk away from a project. That is the biggest thing. I say that because I think fear, I mean, I've talked about this a bit in the past in other podcasts. I think fear in a person's life is like probably one of the most anxiety driving emotions. And we have a lot of fear as artists that something's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be a reflection of our voice. It's not going to be well received. Maybe it'll backfire on our career. Maybe we just won't do a good job. You know, we miss something. I think fear as an artist always has to do with uncovering or acknowledging a degree of insecurity about ourselves that we're not quite ready for the world to know. But Rick Rubin, got the book over here, and acted in the Creative Act. You know, he's like, everything is a representation of you and the journey that you're on. So just like put it out, call it a day, move on. And I think that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is just not to be afraid with letting people see something that you've made, but also afraid of walking away from a project that's not right for you just because it pays well or just because it might feel like a good opportunity. There was a project that I got approached for where I would have been on the road probably for a few months, and I didn't end up doing it because at the time, I think I just felt like my mental health was more important, you know. And there's projects that, well, when I was a production assistant and I was working on features, I was so burnt out. And this was so long ago. I mean, it's literally 17 years ago now, but it still sticks in my mind because I was so scared to not take a day on a set because I thought I would never be called back again, and it might be the end of my film career, and I was just beginning. And it was a really, really active 24/7, you know, fear. And at the end of the day, I got so burnt out that I did completely quit film, and I swore I would never go back on a film set because I was like, what is up with this crazy industry? Everyone's burnt out and miserable. And then I took a few months, and that was why I went and I learned camera, and I went and I worked at a rental house for a few years, and I explored another area of film. I think it was about 4.5 years before I did go back onto a film set after that. But once I went back, I was ready to be back, and it's part of why I have such a big appreciation. So That's a lesson. Thinking if there's like a more like technical lesson. Oh, start writing early. Don't wait to start screenwriting.
Why do you think people wait?
I think it's just such an uncomfortable muscle to stretch. It's not something that everyone's good at right off. Like some people are just naturally good writers. Right. Some people love writing. I'm not someone that loved writing. I loved making. I loved being around people. I loved the act of making. Documentary was much more accessible for me because I could just dive into it. I didn't need to do that much prep. You know, your prep is as you go. But screenwriting is something that I wish that I had started practicing much earlier, and people told me to, and I didn't listen. And it's something that now I'm working double time at learning, like with reading books and examples and listening to podcasts and trying to learn the greats. But that's something that I would say, like, if you are avoiding it, stop avoiding it. Just go do it, because you'll get better at it and you might be really good at it.
What do you think about directors that are that don't write? That strictly they're just like, I only direct and I don't write. What do you think about those directors?
Lucky them if they can make a career that way. I think it's really rare to make a career that way these days. Maybe if you're more on the influencer side, or like the social media side, it's a little bit easier. But even that's hard. You're still concepting to a degree, you know, which is hard. But yeah, I think the reality is that if you don't write as a director, you're not going to be able to give good feedback on a script that's been written for you. I really think you need to be able to write in order to direct well. It's part of the directing process. To me, they're just they go in tandem with one another. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there one person in your life that taught you the most when it comes to how to approach your craft? That's a tough one.
Yeah. No. I think that's the honest answer. I think I have learned from every single person around me. So it's not to say that, like, you know, I've done this all on my own, but I do feel like there's been a lot of people in my career who have given me a hand up and who have given me a chance to prove myself, which has kept my career going. But honestly, I learned everything that I know by doing and failing and like doing again. It wasn't easy. I never felt like I had a mentor, and that always made me really sad. It makes me want to mentor people. I think the EP at the commercial production company I'm with, Preston, probably gave me the most confidence as a filmmaker as far as telling me that I could do it and having my back when I would make films that I felt maybe I wasn't ready to make yet, or, you know, I wanted to experiment with something, or I was afraid of failure. He was always really encouraging, and that gave me confidence. But as far as someone who's been a big influence on me, I mean, I'm inspired by everyone that I know, but Natasha Breyer is a DP who really taught me to own my voice as a woman, to stand up for myself on set, and who expressed so much curiosity about what was in my head. I learned a lot from her style and her level of perfectionism. And as far as like a filmmaker influence, though, someone I don't know, who I'm like not involved with, Spike Jonze is probably one of my biggest inspirations.
Yeah.
The stuff that he writes and the stuff that he makes, like Her is one of my favorite films. Absolutely. And like even how he started in music videos with the Beastie Boys, because he wanted to be like a stunt guy, and he just convinced them to let him do like stunts and stuff, and just like jump out of moving cars with a video camera to get shots for their early music videos. When I think of doing music videos, like that's what I think of doing, is just like working with the artists and going crazy. So yeah.
Is there a part of the process that you just dread?
Oh gosh. Yes. Actually, I dread the edit. I really dread the edit. I really don't like editing. I think because it requires me to sit in one space for so long. And I know there are directors that are so pumped to edit. It's their favorite part of the process. And I cannot understand how that is. And I don't mind admitting that. I feel like it's not like a cool director thing to say. But I love getting to the end of an edit, seeing it. But
I couldn't relate. I could relate to you more.
It's rough.
Yeah.
My brain, the ADHD takes over. I can see all the ways this could go, and I get really overwhelmed. So I really prefer to like work with an editor who's going to make choices.
Yeah, it can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
The opportunity on all those different ways that it can go. But I'm surprised. I mean, most of the directors I've been talking to lately just love the edit. They couldn't get more of it.
Good for them.
Yeah. Good for them. Yeah, I'm happy for them. I'm envious, honestly.
The edit is so important. I mean, it's the final step. You can lose a project in the edit for sure. So it's definitely a thing I have to learn to like. Yeah.
Other than being on set and talking to strangers, what's the part of the process that you enjoy the most?
Working with the actors. Yeah. Like I feel like I am an actor's director. I want the actors to feel that they are living the art in a way that they're trusting me, I guess, because I don't think it's all about feeling like an actor isn't necessarily going to always feel confident in their performance, even though that's ideal. But I think if they can trust you as the director, that you've done it, you've communicated well, you've prepared well, you worked together well, and you feel super clear in the character that you're inhabiting and what the point of the scene is and what the point of this moment is. That's the funnest thing, is being able to create a story out of nothing, like out of thin air, just because this amazing actor is up here giving a performance and inhabiting a character that started on paper. It's just the absolute funnest thing to. It feels like you're like giving birth. I don't know how that feels like, but yeah, it's like you had something that's been developing for so long, and then now it's this like finally like this living, breathing. The project is like the child, that's the best. I write for actors. Like when I'm writing my script, I have actors in mind. Maybe they'll end up doing it, maybe not, but it's written for an actor generally, like the parts. Yeah,
that's awesome. Have you ever found yourself in a place, in a moment where you're trying to convey something to an actor or actress, but it's not hitting for them?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. I think that's...
What do you do?
Yeah. I think one of the worst things that you can do as a director is be indecisive. I've had to really learn how to make decisions for the better or worse. I have to have done my job well enough that I know what I want this to feel like. And there's no doubt in my mind, because if there's doubt in my mind, there's going to be doubt in an actor's mind. And they're going to feel it. They're going to feel uncertain in where they're going with it. And so one of the things that I've just had to learn, and I think as a director, the glory of it is that you get better at this for the rest of your life. If I'm directing when I'm 80, I'm going to be light years away from now. But yeah, battling any sort of indecisiveness. Like if you are indecisive, I feel like there's work that needs to go be done on that script. Something hasn't been fleshed out or made clear enough. So yeah, knowing where you're going, that's the biggest thing. And I think I've had so many moments of indecisiveness that I've learned from in the past with watching how it affects an actor or the script or the story or the edit. So it's something that I'll always be learning. Yeah.
I think it's really great to know what the battles are that you're going to be fighting your entire life.
Yeah. Indecisiveness for sure. I think I have learned at 37 the hard way that indecisiveness does not usually land anyone in a good spot. It's better to just be decisive and move forward and change direction radically if you need to. So that goes with life, that goes with a script, that goes with a character. Be decisive, learn something from that performance. You'll know if it's wrong. And then you can take the actor aside and say, this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. Let's pivot. Let's chat. I think you will always like know when it hits well. So yeah.
Well, Elle, is there a question that I haven't asked you yet? What question do I not know how to ask you?
Oh my gosh. You've asked such good questions today, honestly. I guess a good one would be, how do you always keep your voice fresh as an artist? Like, and not do the same thing over and over again or get too comfortable. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. So
yeah. Do you know how to do that?
I think I've been making decisions on how to do that recently. This year ahead for me is, I think, kind of going to be an entire rebrand year. I say rebrand, but like inside and outside for me, because something that I've noticed is I've been very comfortable in commercials the last 8 years, but you're never just one thing as an artist. You have to be allowed to play and experiment and dabble. And so I've made some great commercials that I'm really proud of. And now I'm working more narratively, but there's so many other things. Like, I would love to paint again. I wrote a book last year. Is probably going to be published in the next few months. And I'm writing I have 17 other books that I've outlined. Like, I love writing books, poetry. Like, I'll have a book of poems that's probably going to be published at some point. And there's so many other things that I have going on that I think all art kind of complements art. So I'm trying to allow myself more freedom to go focus on this book of poetry or go focus on this book about, XYZ, when there might be pressure to really just focus on commercials because it's what's paying rent right now and making money. So that's something I'm doing more of, is like allowing myself to be an artist in ways that feel scary and vulnerable again. Like, I was actually thinking on my Instagram, what if I just started posting like poems? People would probably not understand what's going on. They probably would think that I'm in like some emo space, It'd be so off-brand. But I think it's important to me that I'm able to use social media as an outlet for like any piece of artistry that I feel like, and whether or not it's like good for my commercial career, my film career. Yeah. I think it's important for everyone to just like always dabble and have fun.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more with you. I think if you put all of your creative and passion eggs into one basket, you're kind of doomed for failure.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets old after a while. Honestly, that's why I cleared out my Instagram the other week. When you were digging those things up, I was like, where did those come from? But
tagged.
I started to feel like there is one reflection of me online, and it was no longer accurate. Like, it was just too one thing. And there's like a lot more of me to go around. So I don't know. Joking. But it's a fun outlet, like, we're lucky to have the internet. We're lucky to have social media. I'm probably going to take a break from social media for a while, but like, it's fun to like show people a side of yourself and then be able to show people another side of yourself, in expression.
100%.
So, yeah.
Well, Elle, thanks so much for this conversation. It's been fun.
This was so fun. Thank you for the really good questions. I hope I didn't talk at you too much.
No. It was ideal. It was perfect.
Thanks.
Great insights.
This was great. I really do love Reframed. So.
Well, that's good. This is not we try and keep the brand out of these conversations, to be honest with you.
You can edit that out.
So maybe I won't this time.
No, you can. It's fine. Whatever you feel like. But no, for real,
Cool.
This was really nice. Thank you for having me.
All right, recording stopped and we did it.
Woo!
Hey everyone, Dylan here. Look, I'm a little shocked, honestly, by how well this podcast is doing. And we'd like to make a lot of episodes soon. So, like this video, subscribe to the channel. It'll help us make more. Thank you.